In our opening chapter, we will create a base mesh for our amulet using the panel loops and ZRemesher tools in ZBrush. We will also learn some useful tips and tricks with ZBrush's masking features.
Hello everyone, this is the first chapter in creating this amulet that you see before you. We're going to be using mostly ZBrush for sculpting, then we're going to make materials in KeyShot and rendering, using Photoshop for some additional adjustments, and even Null to check out some mix map extractions. So right now I have my ArtStation page open up. You can just basically do a Google search for Seth Thompson ArtStation and you'll be able to find me here. One of the things that I wanted to do is, you guys might remember this goblet that I was working on, the Dark Souls goblet. A lot of the techniques that I'm going to demonstrate within this amulet are things that I developed when I was making this, but I just don't have time to create a tutorial that shows how I made all of this. So that's why I kind of put everything into this smaller section. So let's go ahead and get started. And for those of you that purchased the tutorial, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. I use the money to usually buy new computers and stuff. And then for those of you on YouTube, I'm glad you can check it out for free. So ZBrush, here we are. Load up screen. I'm just going to minimize this. I am in 2018 here, and then document, as you guys usually know if you watch my tutorials, I always say new document. Then I change the range back here to 0 because I like having a solid background. So we're going to start everything off with a polyplane. So clicking on the cylinder 3D, let's just come in here, find plane 3D. We'll drag that out in our viewport. I'm going to press T on my keyboard so that it's active. And up here, I'm going to click Make Polymesh 3D. Next thing I'm going to do is give this some subdivisions. Right now it's only 1,000 polys. Let's press Control D on the keyboard. Control D, Control D. 66,000 looks about right. And I'm going to go up here to see-through. So what you can see is we need to have a rectangular kind of shape to this amulet, and we need to have these like circular, half circular cutouts on the corners. So what I'm going to do is pressing W on the keyboard. That puts me into transpose mode. I'm just going to kind of thin this out a bit by highlighting this section here. I'm just kind of dragging it in. I think this is about right. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now I'm going to switch back to my brush mode by pressing B. I'm going to standard. By the way, if you guys see all these different brushes that are in here, that's just because I've added a ton of custom brushes, including the super famous Michael Vicente orb brushes that you can find for free. So anyways, I'm just going to go back to our standard brush, and now we're going to start masking out some of these corners. And I could mask them out by hand going like this, but it's not very accurate. So what I'm going to end up doing is holding down a control on the keyboard. I'll click on this mask pin area here. I'm going to go to mask circle. So this way I can get like a really accurate mask on here. Thing is we have to do 4 corners, so I'm going to activate symmetry. I'm going to press X on the keyboard. Now you can see we have symmetry. But I want to have symmetry up here and on the bottom. So let's expand this area over here. I'm going to minimize this brush section, or get rid of it altogether. And over here under transform, I'm going to drag this over to the side. And you can see we have activate symmetry on. I'm just going to turn on Y symmetry as well. And now you can see we have it on all 4 corners. So next thing we want to do is we're going to use that mask circle, and we can kind of come here. Now you can see we can get to the corners. Problem is when you're dragging out, it doesn't make a perfect circle. So one thing I want to show you guys that's pretty cool, press Control on the keyboard. Up here under stroke, just click on this, and by default, it doesn't have square or center set on. So what I want to show you, if you click on square, now when you click and drag this out, it makes a perfect circle, and that's what we want. The thing that I don't like though is that I want it to come from where my cursor is. I'm not explaining that well, so let's click on here again and click on center. So now watch where the mask starts. It'll start at the center of my cursor point, and that gives us really good control to come over here, right to our corner, and then we just pretty much drag that out, and then we can kind of get that nice oval corner that we're going to need. But the thing about this is it's just too perfect. Going back here, you know, I don't imagine the circle is really, really big, right? So that's what we want to do. So I'm going to move this down a little bit. I'm going to clear this. Another thing I'm going to show you guys that a lot of people don't know about is as you drag out the mask, while you're doing this, press the spacebar on your keyboard, and then you can kind of drag this around wherever you want. And there we go. So now I think we have a nice mask selection. What I want you to do now is under polygroups, you could either come in here and say group masked, but I like to use the shortcut, so I press Control W on my keyboard. So what that's done now is it's made a polygroup on the sides. To illustrate that, let's press Shift F, and now you can see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this. So what I want you to do is Control Shift click on here. So anytime you do the Control Shift click with polygroups, it'll kind of invert between different polygroups, isolate or hide, etc. So we want to have these hidden on the side. Next thing we're going to do is go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and we're going to click this Delete Hidden button. Right now it's giving us an error message that it can't delete because there's a subdivision level. So let's go up here and click Delete Lower. And now let's try that again. Delete Hidden. And now we should be good to go. Yep, so this is technically gone now. Now we only have this mesh that you see in front of us. Next thing that we want to do is we need to give this some thickness because it's still a flat plane. We don't need it super thick, but here you can see we have like a little bit of thickness to it. Maybe like a ½ inch, something like that. So I'm going to press Shift F again, and I'm going to kind of rotate to the side here. And I want to be able to see this full viewport, so I'm going to zoom in a bit. And we're going to use panel loops. For those of you who see my tutorial on ZBrush Central, you're going to be already familiar with these steps, so you can skip ahead if you want, but otherwise you can come in here to review. So edge loop. What we want to do in here is this is panel loops. I'm just going to click this right now so you can see what happens. We've created just a little bit of thickness by default, but it's just not strong enough. So I'm going to tell it, let's go up to like maybe 1.3. Now we have some nice thickness to this. But what I also want to show you is when this extrudes, when we click panel loop, you'll notice that it goes in a left to right direction. So it'll start right here and then it'll go to the right. See how that happens? So let's undo that. Down here, that's because we have this elevations by default set to 100. So for example, let's go to -100. We're going to do that again, and now you will notice it'll extrude from the right to the left. So what I want us to do is we're going to set this to 0, and then that way it will extrude evenly to the left and to the right. This is important because I want our center pivot space to be right here. So let's click that, and now you can see it's extruded from left to right. Illustrating that again, left and right, our middle point is right here. So coming back here to transform, just to illustrate why we want to do this, is I'm going to click on here, see this Z symmetry? Now technically, like this isn't exactly what I want. Later we're going to clean this up, but now you can see that it is working perfectly on the front, all sides evenly. Now if we hadn't set this elevation to 0, I'm going to show you what would have happened. Panel loops, now it goes left to right. Now it's thinking the center is here. Yeah, it still thinks that it's here, so whenever we use that Z symmetry, and I try to do this, it's trying to sculpt off here somewhere in world space. And because in the end I want us to save time being able to be using symmetry to sculpt across all of this at the same time, it's important that we set this elevation to 0. Okay, so let's do that. I think this is going to be a pretty good thickness. The next thing I kind of want to show you guys, which is pretty cool about panel loops, is here. You see this shape? This is basically showing you the extrusion profile that is occurring whenever we click panel loops. Now, for example, let's come here. I'm going to undo the panel loop. I'm just going to say reset. So now it's completely flat. Now if we do panel loops, you can see that it's flat here. So you can basically create a pretty cool shape in here that'll be what the profile is of this when you extrude it. So for example, now we did this. Now you can see that it's trying to kind of match that shape as it does it. So it's kind of cool thing to do. The other thing that I want to illustrate to you guys that a lot of people don't know about is how do we get that nice crisp sharp edge back? Because now when we're dragging stuff out, by default we're getting these curves. All you have to do is click on one of these points, hold this with your mouse, and then drag off here and then come back. So the entire time make sure that you don't let go of the pressure when you select this with your mouse or Wacom, and then come back, and then now it's going to be sharp. So by default, anytime you click a new one in, it'll start feeling a little soft usually, but all you got to do, come off to the side, and that'll switch it either between sharp or soft. See? So pretty cool thing to know. A lot of people don't know about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that original profile back that we had because I do like that little edge. So let's get it back to be sharp by dragging off. Yeah. And it's not perfect, but I think it will serve our purposes. This is rounding out a bit, so what I'm going to do is go up a little higher on this and see if I can get our original shape back. Could be a little bit tricky. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag that one off there. Oh, by the way, yeah, if you want to delete one, let's say you click on here and then you want to get rid of this one, just drag it off and then you let go of the mouse and then it's gone. So I'm going to do this one more time. Now I've got something that's a little bit sharper on the edges. Sometimes you'll just need to keep playing around with this. Once I move these over here to the left and right, I was able to get my sharp edge back. So I'm pretty satisfied with this. What I need to do next, though, is you can see that we have a little bit of weird topology going on the edges here. So I'm going to smooth that out a bit. That's just kind of one of the things that happens with panel loops when you use it. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have all that symmetry activated, I'm going to just come through here and I'm going to hold down shift so that we turn to our smooth mode and just smooth out the edges of this a bit. I still want to keep it somewhat sharp. In fact, I'm going to go back and redo this. And maybe here on the corners just a little bit too. Okay. So it's not perfect, but it's okay. In the end, we're going to be doing a lot of sculpting to this, so the shape is going to be changing anyhow. Now that we have this nice model here, what I want to show you is press Shift F on your keyboard. You can see that there's a little bit of funky topology going on around here on the edges, and that just occurs sometimes whenever you're using panel loops. So let's take a moment to re-topologize this automatically using the ZRemesher. That's actually under geometry, so let's minimize edge loop, and we're just going to come down here to ZRemesher. I'm going to turn the poly count up here to about 10,000, and let's just click that. And then now you can see it cleans up that topology. That could have caused us some sculpting issues. That's why I thought it was a good idea to do that. And now we have a pretty decent model. I think next what we want to do is quickly make some UVs for that, and we will make that in the next chapter.
This tutorial and its downloadable content is available now on my ZBrush, Gumroad, and Steam stores, which are linked in the description below. Watch the following video to see what is included with your purchase. If you purchase this tutorial, here is a preview of all the bonus content you will receive. Firstly, in ZBrush, I've included 3 different versions of the Amulet. 1, my final sculpted version with all the ornamentational details and destruction. 2, just the sculptural details like ornamentation. 3, a version without anything so you could follow along and create your own during the process. Secondly, you will receive the final keyshot file demonstrated here, which contains all of the texture maps, lighting, and everything that is shown during the tutorial. The thing that I find really useful about this is having access to the material graph and seeing the complex custom materials that are created during the tutorial. This will really help you with understanding how to create your own complex materials in Keyshot. Next, you will receive all of the final PSD files showcased throughout the tutorial, including this gold-painted Mount Fuji design with all of my different layering processes, as well as the custom crest base that is used later for sculpting in ZBrush based off of masks. Also, you'll get all of the final texture maps that are showcased during the tutorial, such as these, which are all tileable. You will also receive all of the original videos in downloaded format at their full high definition resolution. Also, I have included dozens of high quality personal art images such as my Dark Souls 3 High Lord of Walnor fan art, which inspired me to create the Amulet tutorial to showcase the techniques I learned and developed during the process. Whether you purchase this tutorial or follow along for free on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for your continued support, and I cannot wait to see the epic amulets you create soon.